what I was saying is I like to, if I grab an image, I'm going to copy it and either paste it again at a later point or paste it into a couple layers. So I'm going to go into my layers here. The other thing I like to do is I always like to make my layers really big. So I like to go into the options and make it big enough so I can actually see the layers themselves as I work. And then I will lock that first layer, go to the second layer and Command V, or you can hit Command or Control F. And Command Control F is paste in front, so I use that a lot. So now I got two versions. So I got a backup version basically. If I want to do different things with the backup version, for example, what you can do is for that first version, when you do your image trace, you can play with the color. So I was looking for this last Thursday when I was talking to everybody. I forgot where the edit colors were, and they're under edit color here. And you can invert the color. So if you invert it and then do your image trace, you're just going to get a different result. But then what you can start to do, so I'm going to go into this image trace, expand it, get rid of the white background. And then I'm going to go up into my second one, and then I will actually duplicate that so I have a backup. So I always kind of have a backup of the image. And then I'll lock down the other layers here, and then go into this second one. And then I will image trace that, but I won't invert it. And maybe I'll just play with, like, if you go into the image trace palette under window, you can go into image trace, and you have kind of the same things that you have up here. So this brings it up when you click on that icon as well next to view. You can play with this threshold. That will change the amount of tracing. Like, that's actually pretty cool. And you can play with some other settings too, but let's say I like this. So I'm going to expand this one. And then one of the things you can start to play with is like shifting the two image traces to get like an off register type effect. Now this kind of works better when you're playing with color because you can get some really good results. But here, what I can do is play with the grayscale. So first, I'll make sure I actually hit cancel there. I'll just make sure I'm selecting one big piece, and then play with the grayscale of the image so it's a little bit lighter. And then what you can do is you can start to play with some blend modes. So if you look in properties, in this properties panel over here, under appearance, under opacity, if you click on opacity, it opens up this window and you get these blend modes. So if you open that up, you can click down. If you play with multiply, let's say, what it does is it takes the two layers. So you have layer 1 and layer 2. And Photoshop does this as well, but it takes the two layers, and depending on what blend mode it is using, it will do a calculation. And let's say if you use multiply with gray, what that does is it multiplies your dark pixels together, and white pixels don't get multiplied together. So it's performing this kind of math on the pixels themselves. Even though it's vectors, it's looking at it from a pixel standpoint. So like if I go into lighten, actually I have to, let's see, select this and then go into lighten. It does, you know, it kind of does something different. If I go into difference, you know, it's going to give you different results. So it's kind of an interesting thing to play with. And then if you select the one layer, you know, and offset it more, you know, you get this interesting off registration effect. So that's one of the things you can play with if you're using multiple layers. Well, let's say I go into this top one do an image trace on that one. So I have the top layer selected. I'll image trace that. And then I will expand it. And I will select this white and delete it. So now I can see through it. But maybe on this one, this is where I want to start to fill it with type. So I talked about a error message that might pop up. So if you go into your type tool and pick area type and click on this, it gives you this error message about non-compound paths. So you have to go into object compound path and hit release. But if you click on it again, it still might not be fixed. So the trick is to go back up into object and hit expand. And you're gonna have to hit expand multiple times. Like I did it again, it's still not working, but don't give up. So keep on hitting expand and it's still not working. And let me hit it more times. And there it worked. So for some reason, even though you release the compound path, you have to hit expand a bunch of times because I think there's multiple like compound paths overlaid, and expand is going through them all, and eventually you get to the last one and then it works. So if you get frustrated and you're trying to release that with the tip I gave you last time and it's not working, just keep on hitting expand. And expand, when you go into expand, that's your kind of your trick to actually releasing any artwork that's not doing what it wants. Hit expand and it should kind of break up the artwork into pieces. So here I'm just playing with the type. One of the things I want to talk about as you guys work with type now and you're thinking about these projects is think about the era of the type, think about like the meaning behind the type, the mood that the type conveys. You know, if you're going to do something that's Gothic like this, think about the fonts that existed during that time period, you know, during the time period of Dracula. Think in terms of the subject matter. So if you pick, let's say, a famous poet, maybe you use some script face font. If you pick like somebody who's like a modernist, maybe you think about using like a sans serif font. So in the unit, I talk about the classifications of fonts, and this is something that you'll get into more throughout your different graphic design classes, but each font has a history behind it and a way it's classified. So, you know, sans serif fonts, there's all sorts of different classifications. There's grotesque, neo-grotesque, humanistic, geometric. So whatever that person in history was, try to find a font that fits in the time frame and conveys the mood. So for Dracula, I was looking at different font faces. If you go into type, you're going to have a lot to choose from by default. And I was thinking about using a script face font. So at first I picked something like, you know, like brush script. And it just didn't feel right. Like it didn't fit in with that time period. So what I did was, if you go to more fonts from Adobe, that will open up Adobe fonts. And then you can do a more kind of focused search. Now, one thing that bothers me about Adobe fonts is they don't really stick to that classification system. They kind of do down here. You have sans serif, but they don't really break down the sans serifs into different types of sans serifs. Then you have your serif fonts, but they don't break that down either. So they could break it down even further, but then they go into font properties, and then they have a series of these tags. So I guess horror would be kind of good. But it's kind of like cheesy horror. So what I picked instead was black letter. And they don't, it's funny, they don't have a black letter that falls into this horror tag. So it gives you this error message here. So I'm going to clear that out and then go back to black letter. And so I thought the black letter fonts actually felt like they worked better with Dracula. So I picked this this Sabbath black font. And so once you add it, go back, and it will be available to you. So here is black. I'm doing it the opposite way. They may not be able to use Black Sabbath for copyright reasons. So here is Sabbath black, and there is something about that I like better. And then I went here and I just changed the color of the font to white. So this was kind of like the start of what I was working on. So there's a lot more you can do with this, and the idea is to like really push it. Now I wouldn't stop here. I think a lot of people would probably say, okay, I'm just going to fill it with type, and that's going to be as far as I take it. But I think you can take it further. There's all sorts of weird things you can start to do. Like, I like how you can really see Dracula in this, but maybe what I do sometimes, what I'll do is like take a screenshot, and I'll use on a Mac. I like the screenshot shortcut of Control-Shift-Command-4, because that actually does a copy, and then you can paste it, and I'll paste it in a new layer. So that basically turned everything to pixels, but now I can do another image trace. But this time around, instead of doing just black and white, I'll play with this preset. And let's see, like play with some of these presets. Yeah, maybe 3 color. Yeah, play with this or low fidelity photos, another one. Kind of gives you the same thing because I already have limited colors anyways. And then expand that. And then use your direct selection tool to play with this a little bit. You know, grab sections. It distorted the Gothic black letter font, which is kind of neat. But just play with different aspects of this. You can outline pieces. And sometimes I like when you do this, when you copy it as an image, I like some of the like weird kind of edge effects you get. And then changing colors. Or, you know, the grayscale values on things. And what it does too is it really breaks up these characters. So then what you can do with some of this, actually I'm going to go back to this, copy pieces and actually cut them out. So Command X, and then throw those on different layers. And I'm using Command F to kind of put it in the same position. And then maybe grabbing, sometimes I just kind of grab big sections with the direct selection tool. And then actually just hitting E, and that's the shortcut for scale, and then like scaling up pieces of things. So overlapping things as well, I think is interesting. So collaging it, you know, in different ways. So some different things I wanted to talk about, different effects. One is with the type tool. So I'm going to create another artboard here. And let's say I want to add something that's a little bit more intricate and interesting to this Dracula composition. So let's say I want to play with the actual name Dracula. So I'll just go to my type tool. And type it out here. Okay. And there's a tool here called touch type. And I just want to show you this because you can do some interesting things with this. What's nice about touch type is you click on that, and then you can click on each letter in whatever you typed out, and then you can manipulate that letter individually. So you can scale up one of those letters. You can change the position. Let's say I want to lower that R. And actually I want to scale it like this. So you can scale up individual letters. Let's say the L to, let's say I want to scale that up. So you can kind of really manipulate your text on a character by character basis. But what's nice about it is after you use that tool, you can go back into your type tool, and then everything is still selectable. So then you can scale it all together using Shift, Command, comma, period. I usually say Shift, Command, less than, greater than 2. The less than makes it smaller, greater than makes it bigger. So that's a great little tool to play with in your type option. So that's a nice tool. And then the other thing, so actually I'll take this to kind of use this artboard as a way to place things. Sometimes I like to make things really big and just kind of crop it off as well. Oh yeah, another thing about the unit is I was mentioning readability. So when you do things like this, really you're going to lose the readability. But sometimes if you crop things a certain way, the tops of the letters are always more readable than the bottom, and the right side, actually the left side of your letter forms are more readable than the right side. So it's something to think about. And actually I want to play with this. I just had an idea. So I want to take this, and one thing to think about is like the crossover between what the word is and then what it could symbolically represent. So do you think, you know what I'm thinking here? What if this was like, like a cross? This doesn't like Dracula not like that. I don't know, giving it some like religious overtones. I'm gonna try to push this. Just like a quick idea, I guess. Here we go. I don't know if that's goofy or not, but anyways, things to play with as you're doing this. I don't know if I necessarily like that idea, but sometimes too, I'll make something really big, and if I don't really care for it that much, I will fade it out. So I will make it grayscale. And so it kind of fades into the image. It's not as obvious, but it's kind of like a hidden meaning implied there somewhat, where you're barely going to see it. So anyways, it's kind of interesting. So another thing I want to talk about is I talked about type on path, and I want to use another image to start this off. So I will pick I'll pick like Beethoven. I don't know. Here's Beethoven. So let me see some images. Or no, I'll pick Albert Einstein. So I'm going to pick Einstein. How about this? So I'm going to pick this, copy this, throw this in here, and I'm going to invert it with the colors again. So I'm going to go to Edit Color, Invert. And I kind of like to do that because it just gives me the solid silhouette, and then I can get rid of the white background. So now I'm going to image trace again. That doesn't look too good, so I'm going to play with the threshold. It really loses him. Let me see if I can find a better Einstein. Maybe this one. Okay, so I'm going to go back. Invert. Still not that great. I'm going to copy it. Let's just do it like this. Now, create a new layer. And paste that one up front, and then I'll invert this one. And then I'll do that trick with the so I'll make this grayscale. Shift it, and then I'll go into opacity and I don't like this one as much. let me do this. Sometimes I'll just keep on kind of adding layers until I feel like it works. This time I'm going to play with this line art. Sometimes this can be interesting. Let's bring some of these packs in. But yeah, it loses it too much. So all right, that's better. So still kind of lose the quality of Einstein, but anyways. So I'm going to expand this. Then get rid of some of these. So that's good. And I got some pink in there for some reason. So I want to keep it grayscale. So I'll go back up the color here and then convert to grayscale. So now I got my grayscale. So I want to just show you this idea of having type on a curve, but radiating out the curve. So there's kind of two ideas to show you here. One is to have type on a curve and expand it. So what I'm going to do is kind of trace out the silhouette kind of his outline a little bit. I'm just using the curvature tool. So I'm kind of quickly just kind of going around. And then use my type on path tool. So I'll go here, type on path. Before I do that, let me just find like a famous Einstein quote besides E equals MC squared. Oh, this is a good one. Imagination is more important than knowledge. So that's a really good Einstein quote. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to apply that. But the font is totally wrong for this. And let me get the whole thing in there. So Einstein, you know, you think in terms of like when he was coming up with the theory of relativity, and it was the like early 20th century. So you'd want to think in terms of what fonts work for that time period. So you can even do a search, you know, fonts from the 1920s. So you can go here, just go to images, and it'll give you all sorts of examples. So kind of like Art Deco, and then you have modern fonts, modernist like sans serif fonts like Futura and Avant-Garde. So yeah, it's like the Roaring 20s style Jazz Age. This is like that's like a geometric font, even though it says grotesque, it has the perfect circle. So I think, oh, that's a nice font too. That style is very interesting. This grotesque typeface, that's interesting too. So let me go back now into my fonts and just kind of find something that I feel like fits in with that quote. Maybe even I don't know if any of these really work. Let's see. So let's see. Maybe I'll just use Bedoni. I'll talk, and it doesn't really lend itself too well to the curviness of the path. So maybe I just got to find the right spot for it. So it's gonna space. So it kind of works a little bit over there. So one of the things you can do is maybe take this type and then use the option method of selecting something and duplicating it. Actually, the first thing I would do is convert it to outline. So go to object or type, create outlines, and then use your regular selection tool to option click on that to create a duplicate and scale it. You can scale even more. You can kind of just radiate it out. So it's just like doing like a radiation kind of growth type effect of that. Another thing you can do too is with the type tool, add it to a shape. So if you have like a circle like this, and then let me just fill it with nothing. So I'm going to have no fill. And then again, with something like this, I'll copy it so I have a backup. So I'm just hitting copy once there. And then when you add type to like a circle like this, and you see logos that have like a circular type on top and circular type on the bottom. Here I'm going to use my type tool again. And here I'll just like type out relativity. So with the type on the curve tool, you have options. So if you let's see. If you go up into type here, and there's a type on path option, and you can play with these different options. You got skew, so it kind of makes every character straight in relationship to the curve. You got these different options. This ribbon kind of puts it at an angle. This stair stepping effect where nothing gets distorted, but everything is straight up and down. And then you can go into gravity. I'll just do that one too. So gravity, I think that's almost looks normal. But anyways, if you go to type on path into options, then you have these different options. You know, you can flip it as well. You gotta hit preview to see it. So if you hit flip, then it's flipped. So what flip does, which is kind of cool, it puts it on the bottom part. And then baseline shifts it. So the line that the type falls in that line, you have your baseline, and you can shift it down by having it follow the ascender or have it go in the center. Usually, sometimes I have it follow the a sender, so it's inside. And then you hit OK, so it's set. And then with the type tool, what you can do, well, actually, then I would take something like this. There is this little like line with the type tool. So actually, after you add your type and you go back to your direct selection tool, you click on that line and you can move it inside there. And you can flip it as well. So you can actually flip it if you want to flip it. It's kind of a pain, actually, to do that sometimes. But you can reposition it with that line. See, I just flipped it just there. It can be a little like wonky, so you got to kind of do it slowly. So you can take something like that, and maybe and then I have my copy of my circle, or you can actually copy this again by just selecting it, Command C and Command F. And then taking the copy, you have to find that line, oops. And what I'll do here actually is just go back into type of path options, preview, and then flip that, but have it go on the sender. So now it's inside. And then with something like this, and if it's a pain, you can actually just rotate it too. So just rotate it like that. So that's another thing with the type tool where you see this like a logo effect where you have something in a circle, then you have something inside the circle and the type on the outside. I would change this, I don't know, make a statement. So everything and then you have the word letters is in there. I don't know about this. It doesn't really work. But anyways, I don't know. That's just adding type to the circle and manipulating it. And then thinking about what else you can do. So these are just some different techniques you can use. So I kind of got two ideas here that I would probably want to push further. So is there any questions? I kind of wanted to just go through a couple different variations of this assignment just to give you some different ideas. Any questions or thought, anything? So yeah, so you just kind of push it further. I mean, I would do something here now too, where I would play with the type overlapping, cutting things out, using the shape builder tool. So I just want to make sure that people have ideas to play with this and come up with something. So it's a combination. Use the type tool in different ways, but make the type meaningful. You know, the type must represent the historical figure in a meaningful way. You know, so don't use fonts randomly. Think about the history behind the font and how that reinforces the history behind the person or the architecture that you're picking for the assignment. So yeah, so that's it. That's all I have to really talk about.
Thank you.
These techniques. So
Professor,
yes.
I have a question.
Okay.
Yes, I would like to know if I want to save the picture, but when I save all picture and it will show me the words. Seems like the picture outside word, and I have no idea how to cut this word to save the picture.
What do you mean? So when you save your image,
Yeah, I want to save the picture, but when I save all the picture, that it will show me the picture outside words, and I don't want to keep the
are you saying I have words outside here and you don't want those saved?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you have your artboard, let's say you were going to print this, only what you see in the white it's going to print. Same thing. Let's say I wanted to save this now. Like I'm going to save this and I'm going to throw it into Discord so people can see these as examples. So when I go to file, I can save as, and by default you have your Illustrator format, so that's what you'll save it as. If you have save it as a PDF, so I'll call it Dracula Einstein, and you save that and you look at that PDF after you save it out of Illustrator, it's going to open as a PDF file, and then all the information on the outside will not be seen. It's going to be cut off. So now if I go to where I saved that, so let me find it. So I go into desktop, and there it is, this PDF. I double click on that. And now if you look at this, it actually saved it as 2 pages, which is kind of cool because, well, let's see what it did. Let me double check. So it looks like,
If I want to save to the other types, so it's the same way to save the picture.
So if you save it, when you say save picture, what do you mean in terms of?
Save the picture for the other types. Things
Yeah.
like the JPG, like that.
Yeah, so it'll do the same thing. So like, you see how imagination went over the edge, but here it cut it off automatically. So it knew that my artboard went to that point, and it didn't include anything that went beyond it. Now, if you save it as if you go to File and then to save as a JPEG, you have these options here. So you have export for screens, export as, and save for web legacy. And they all kind of work the same way. The easiest one to do is export as, and then it doesn't give you any preview. If you want to save your artboards each individually, you have to click on use artboard, and then give it a name. So I'll call it, type portrait. Save it to my desktop. And then here it's giving you a little preview, and everything that is set here at 72 is fine if it's just going to be something you look on a website or you send in an email, let's say, hit OK. And now when I go to that image here, it saved these 2, type portrait 1, that's my 1 artboard, and I open that up, and there it is right there. It's funny that the PDF version did not save the Dracula type that was going up and down. It did not like it for some reason, so it didn't include it, but it did include it here. So yeah, if you want to share these, let's say on Discord, you would probably want to save them as a web format, like a JPEG or a PNG. Now when I go into Discord, if I go into our class here, and I'll go into, I haven't created a folder for this, but if I go into here, this is assignment 4, and then I I can just drop and drag it like this right into Discord, and upload, and there is the image. One thing that, since this is a PNG file, you see how it's, there's some like transparency almost. There's no background there. It looks like the white background here actually represents nothing. If you don't have like white in the background, like if I do the Einstein image, you'll see. So I'm gonna throw Einstein up here and throw that into Discord. Well, actually, does have a background. So no, see, it doesn't. See, there's no background. It's not white. So one thing you have to remember is if you're going to save these web formats, create a big white rectangle. Go to your bottommost layer. Even maybe create a layer at the very bottom. And it actually creates it at the top. So I'm going to drag it all the way down. I think right there is fine. And then go to your rectangle tool and draw out a rectangle. And now it's filled with white. And now when I save this, it will have a white background. But the white of the screen really means no image at all. It means transparent. And when you save it, there's no pixels there unless you create this white background and put it all the way in the background. And I'll show you this one last method. So of saving these out, if you go to Window, there's this asset export. So I'll just show you this one last thing. It's good to know these little tricks for exporting. So if you go back to File, there's also under Export, Export as Screen for Screens, which is somewhat similar to this. So now what you do with this is if you're ready to export, you can grab your image and you can drag it into Asset Export. But it kind of does two things. If I drag it just like this and drop it, it takes every single piece, every single layered element and separates them as separate assets. And this is something that you would use like for web design purposes. Let's say you have a whole series of logos and icons and you want to use them on a website. That's good because you just drag them and it separates them for what you want. But it's not good for this because you just have one image and you want it to be all one image when you export it. So instead, what you do is you hit Option as you drag into this, and it saves it as one image. And so there it is right there. It's a little tiny, a little hard to see, but once you're ready, and I'll do it with Dracula as well. So I'll take the, I'll just grab all the, I got to unlock it, I guess. Got some lock layers. I'll drag all the Dracula stuff. And then one more lock layer, lock. Okay, there you go. So I'll grab everything here, but you have to hit Option and then you drag it out and then it's there. And then when you're ready to export this, there's options down here, but you can pick the two things you want to export. So you actually have to click on them and they're highlighted in blue. And then you can add more options so you can export JPEGs and PNGs at the same time, or even PDFs. And you can change the scale if it's a image format, and then you just hit export. And I'll go to my desktop and hit OK. And now when I go to my desktop here, let me see where they're at. They should actually do this. They're in this, looks like they're in this folder here. It didn't save, for some reason it didn't save the PNGs. I don't know why, but and then here it is. But let me go back real quick. And it should have saved the PNGs too. can add some text at the end of the image here. I'm going to get rid of PDF, and I'm going to hit export one more time. And oh, I think they, you know what it did? It saved it outside of the folder, so they're there, and it's saving it based on these names: asset 10 and 11. So now if I go to desktop, and now I'm going to go back to one of these PNGs. You see it has the background now. So it does have a background now because they added it. Same with Einstein. Has the background. So just one tip for making sure you have a background there, adding that white. So that's a long answer to your question. But if you just save it, export, pick JPEG, PNG, or PDF, then it'll only export what's on the artboard. Is that good?
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
So, yep, you're welcome. All right. Is there any more questions about anything?
No?
No.
So, okay. So that's all I have. I mean, I think everybody should understand this assignment pretty well then. If you have any questions, just kind of connect with me on Discord, and I'm always around. But anyways, it's more of an exploration of type and image together, grayscale, and just try to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some stuff to the unit about typography and more about history, the history of typography and the meaning behind fonts and why fonts were designed a certain way. So when you do research, you can think about the meaning behind the font, and you just don't pick any random font. Just starting to think about the right font that works with the right image. So having you really kind of articulate the meaning of what you're designing with the font that you're using. So that's it. So anyways, that's all I have to say. So, all right, have a good night, everybody. And then I'll
Have a good night.
So, all right, bye. Thank you. See you later.